Let me start the recording. Right, hello. We're back, and we're back with one of the refs of Worlds. A huge responsibility, Gareth. Hello. How are you?
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Lovely to see you. Yeah, I'm good. You're in space. The
I am
videos.
in space. It's my job to look down upon the world, so there you go.
Perfect. That's perfect. Well, it's lovely to have you here. You are going to be one of the refs at Worlds. You've done a lot of refing. We've got a lot. I really have fallen into a routine with the captains, so now I'm going to have to get a bunch of ref questions in my head. Or we could just talk about Worlds generally. Start off there. But let's talk about refing first. You've been doing a lot of refing recently. Refing at Warhammer events. What's your experience?
Yeah, I'd say a fair bit. I'm a little bit jet lagged. Just came back from the UK. I live in California, so although my accent sounds British, I am British, but I live in California. Just came back from, as you mentioned earlier, reffing Warhammer Fest for Games Workshop.
Mm.
But I've also done. I'm the head judge for LVO, Las Vegas Open, largest Sigmar event in the world, largest Warhammer event in the world, or tournament. Um, I did some judging at Nova, which is, I think, the second largest in the US. Um, I also run Old Town Throwdown, which is a series of events here on the West Coast or in California. And I've done some other events in Las Vegas and around the country. So, yeah, I've got a fair bit of experience at TOing and reffing.
Yeah, not that that's all very recent or you're new to it, although I think generally it's fair to say actively reffing versus just being a TO is actually fairly new worldwide for Age Sigmar,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously the events, it's taken a long time to scale to a point where we have these sorts of people, and then someone volunteering and or just doing the job, whatever the situation is also still fairly new. So do you feel like we're still in the proto stages of developing that as a system? How do you feel about that so far?
I think so. I'm undecided yet whether it's necessary for every single event. I think generally, when you have two players who sit down at a tournament to play a game, there's that sort of social contract that they're just going to figure things out. And if they agree to play a rule a certain way, then they agree to play it that way, and that's between them, and that's fine. Right?
Yeah.
The idea that you see it, some TOs go around making sure that every single piece of terrain is exactly 3 inches away from the board edge, etc. Who cares? If both players are fine with it being where it is, then it is where it is. That's sort of my take on it for most events and most games that are going on. You can't have a judge or a ref watching every single table at an event to make sure that there are no rules being broken. You have to rely on the players to do that. And in general, that works just fine. But then when it comes to the final table, the top 8 cut at LVO or etc., you do actually want some active judging, some eyes on the table, not because the top players are going to deliberately make mistakes, but because they're usually having played 6 games of Warhammer over 48 hours or whatever, they're tired, they make mistakes and things can go wrong. And you want to make sure that the game follows as close to the rules as it can so that somebody doesn't win an event because of a rules mistake. So I think it's good to have on the big events at the final tables, but it's not necessary for every event, is my answer.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's mainly to ensure the players are safe, versus actively catching something out. Do you tend to find it's a lot more about actively ensuring that they're maintaining the board state, a term I like to use a lot, which isn't my term, obviously stolen from Magic, but maintaining the board state seems like a much more competent kind of discussion point rather than catching someone out cheating, which feels like
Exactly.
doesn't really happen.
And it's, particularly at the top level final tables where the players are tired, just having somebody who's keeping track of what the score is, what the battle tactic this turn was. How many times do you see in a game, oh, what was my battle tactic? And the players have to try and remember. Just having somebody who's keeping track of all of that stuff and able to fill them in. And then, one of the things I often like to do is somebody declares a battle tactic of desecrate and they choose a garrison. And you're just like, well, just reminding you the rule is for a garrison, you can only desecrate it if you get in. Being 3 inches away doesn't desecrate it. Just reminding of common rules mistakes or things that just make sure that you're aware that this is how it's being played. It's good.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that feels really good. And then generally, like along those a lot of those top tables, I assume you see, like, I don't want to speak for you, so it's a loaded question. Where I assume you see little, like, issues. You see few issues, or do you see
Very
loads?
few issues.
Oh,
Very few. Again, it's more. Well, it depends. Top table of Nova last year, which was Scooter versus his brother,
yeah.
and neither of them had any idea how to play the game. So
Loads of issues.
yeah, loads of issues, but they were happy playing against each other, and we all just had fun. So that was fine. Top table of LVO was a very, again, Scooter against Noah was a very fantastic game, but then there was the ending where both players and both refs couldn't work out who had won the game because we had all forgotten the rules on a little goblin compared to a spawn and who captures the objective. So there were generally very few issues. I mean,
Okay.
at LVO we had 325 players, and I think over that the whole thing there were maybe 6 rules questions.
Okay.
That's nothing.
No, you're right. You're right. I would say Worlds is going to be very interesting for active judging. Like based on my experience being there last year, and wandering around. Have you and the rest of the ref team, because I'm going to be speaking to Madigan as well later, have you started to, as I said, this is new, have you started to develop have there been a bunch of lessons that you've personally learned over the past year or so from doing this as a process? And have you guys started to put that into a system? Like, what's your process?
Well, I think I'll just say that most of my experience so far has been US based, and even though the US is a big country with a large variety of metas, the understanding of rules is fairly consistent. But at Worlds, you'll get countries that play a certain rule or a certain interpretation of a rule, which may be ambiguous. They play it one way, and they view that as being the way that it is played. But other countries play it completely differently and have a different way of playing it. An example being, until it was FAQ'd by GW, is terrain sticky for Desecrate? Once you contest or you capture terrain, do you hold it for the rest of the game or not? Some countries play you do, some countries play you don't. For Worlds, it's really important that every single team understands how it's going to be played. And even if it's not what they're used to, this is how it will be played at Worlds. And so we have the World's ref team created aosfac.com maybe a year ago now, where we have had a whole bunch of rulings set out on the website forever, so that all of the players all of the players involved fully understanding how the rules are going to be played, how they're going to be interpreted. So there shouldn't be any mistakes or miscommunications, is a better way of putting it.
It's a really good thing to have as well. Came up recently, like a conversation. Obviously, I talk about HC1 all the time, and I have an international community that listen and engage with my content, and I can definitely see that different opinions, not based around where I am around the world, vary on certain interpretations. Which then that creates. I mean, as a content creator, I don't generally tend to get into the minutiae as much as I can. But those very fringe case applications are a little bit more something I don't tend to necessarily bring up. But when they do come up, it becomes a conversation point a lot of the time for really very limited actual effect in some cases. Or some cases, massive effect. Really depends on the situation. The AOS FAQ thing seems really positive. Really good. Really good. Have you had a lot of feedback from that? Or has anyone given any feedback on that?
There was a lot of negative feedback in the first couple of weeks. But I think over time, people have just realized that it's just a tool. You can use it if you want. You don't have to use it. We are at the stage now where it gets updated regularly. You'll speak to Madigan later. She's most of the work behind actually creating that and populating it, etc. She's just a machine when it comes to rules. And we get messages all the time from TOs around the world that are very grateful for it and just thank us for putting it together. And from our point of view, it's something that has to be done for Worlds anyway. So if we're going to put together a document of rulings, why not make it available to everyone?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, and my favorite thing as a TO myself is someone goes, "What's the decision?" I'm like, "Someone else has already made it. It's fine. There you go. It's right there." Like, I don't agree with it. Well, guess what? I don't care. Like, it's there and it's available for you, which I think is really positive. Okay, good. So, active judging. So, how have you found that? Like, that's actually wandering around the tables looking for stuff. Like, what are you, like, can I, like, you're not the police, right? So, like, what are you actively looking for? Like, how can you, because I've walked around tables a lot, picking up on where the game is at that point is quite challenging. Is that difficult to do?
It can be, particularly, obviously the size of the event makes a difference. If you're only monitoring 6 tables, that's easy compared to monitoring 60.
Yeah, of course.
The role that I've been playing over the last few large events is I just generally tend to sit at the joint between 2 tables and just watch 2 tables constantly. Usually just make sure that I rotate around all of the top players or the likely contenders, just watching them, making sure, not because they're likely to get anything wrong, but making sure that the armies are being played correctly and just seeing what's going on, really.
I think it's
the main thing that you tend to notice, your question, what do you notice most, is coherency.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, coherency is the thing that most of the time it doesn't really matter, but you may as well get it right, because who knows when it will matter. So just, hey, that model that you've just put down is, looks like it's 2 inches away rather than 1.
Yeah.
Just that sort of thing.
I was going to say, actually, I think that of the people who are going to do well, or people who do consistently well, are the people who I would want active judging being at the most. And my reason is not because I think that they push the boundary to achieve that, is that I think that they themselves would probably say that they would want to win fairly. If they've ended up going through an event, giving themselves +1 to hit on a thing, or, doing this or that was wrong, and then it turns out that they ended up like in a wrong position. I was at Everwinter, and a really well-known player and a super lovely guy ended up turns out that they'd got he changed his list at the very last minute, included an additional coalition unit, and then didn't have the right amount of base units to have that. But he didn't get caught until round 4, until the middle of round 4, and he was on to win the event. And, like, as soon as he was informed, I was like, oh, no problem, just zero my game, and, like, I apologize and I'm sorry. And, because I think a lot of those players want to win fairly, more than other players, I would say. Like, so I think
it's also the reputation of an event. If an event goes down and then afterwards, a week later, it's discovered that the winner of the event, or the guy who came second, was playing a rule wrong throughout the whole event, that kind of detracts from the event. Whereas if it comes out later that the guy who finished 47th was playing a rule wrong, who cares?
Yeah.
that doesn't get news.
No one cares. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so leading up, talking about the FAQ document, is there like a group of you who liaise on that? Or you said Madigan did a lot of that work. Like, have you been a part of that process?
Yeah, so the whole of the World's Ref team, we kind of, every time a book comes out or there's a change in the rules, etc., we just keep our eyes to the ground or ear to the ground, listen to what the issues may be. We take a look through, we figure out what the potential questions on rules could be, and then we have a Discord. We write up the questions. We all take a vote on how we think it should be. We discuss about it, and then once the final decision is made, then it gets put up onto AOSFAC.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's good. Have there been any that have been particularly challenging?
There's always a question that is rules as written versus rules as intended. There are some where we clearly, the rule says one thing, and you're like, we know they didn't mean it to do that. There's no way that makes sense from a game point of view. But we have to be careful about putting our opinions into it, and so we tend to go more towards the rules as written than the rules as intended side of it, even if that makes for a worse gameplay environment. And drawing that line is tricky. The one before GW finally fact, it was the Stormcast coming down within 7 inches guy, if he's not on the board, can you bring him down first, and then after that, guys within 7 inches can come down? We said no, you can't. It was clear that the intention was you could, but rules as written you couldn't. GW eventually fixed it.
Oh, good. All right, lovely. I'm currently making a video about crematorium OBR, and I've broken down in a lot of pictures the when runes are applied, when models are removed, and when damage is done. And even after a lot of research, I'm still unsure on one element. And sometimes things just aren't clear. And it's okay to think that they're not clear. I think they always need a decision, and that's really tough for refs to do.
Well, there's your content when you interview Madigan in a couple of hours, because she knows all of this stuff backwards.
No one knows the answer to this question, but that's okay. Like, that's fine. Right, so Worlds. Let's talk about Worlds. So this is the first time you've been to Worlds. Have you been first time you've been to Worlds. You haven't been to like an ETC or anything like that previously?
I have not. Other side of the world, difficult to get to. So yeah, no, this will be my first time. I'm very excited.
Fun. And do you know how big the ref team is? It's you, Tom, Madigan.
There's 5 of us, I think. I think we have one who's going to be virtual.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay, fun. Oh, a VAR system. Love that. That's cool. All right. Okay, cool. Do you have any aims and goals as like a ref judge team over the event?
I think just no drama, the smoother. If after the event nobody has talked about the reffing, then it's been the perfect event from our point of view, right? Because good reffing never gets talked about, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, so actually, this is actually really interesting. Like, so you're a rugby guy, am I right? No.
Pretty much. I'm cricket and then rugby.
All right, perfect. Okay, good. All right, so we've got sport as an analogy to base this off. So when I got into coverage, one of the things that was really challenging for me was how the coverage was delivered. Like how you talk about cricket, for example, or golf is a lot slower than you would talk about, let's say, football or rugby or American football. WWE, if that's even a sport, is big and boisterous, and then poker, for some reason, they always make jokes. Like, it's like the worst stand-up comedy you could ever watch. And then chess, it's just they say the moves. So, like, pitching myself on where I thought commentary should land was something I analysed a lot. Reffing is also the same as well, right? Like in rugby, like you even look at a ref sideways, you're done. Like you call them sir, you get off. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas in football, you get in their face, you give them some aggro. Like they're quite different. We're talking English football, not American football. Sorry, soccer. So, like, have you guys established or wanted to pitch yourself like that? Like, Tom, who I know, is very much like, shut up, I've told you now, and then walks away. Like, I feel like that's really positive. Like, what do you think? Because, like, worlds will be, people will be arguing. That's a fact.
I'm very much I am the law, I am Judge Dredd.
Okay.
You do not argue with the TO once the TO has made his decision, even if you know it is factually incorrect. Doesn't matter. He has said what it is, and for this event, what the TO says goes. Right?
Okay.
That's my opinion. If you argue with the TO, then you're just going to lose out. You should never, ever, ever talk back. It's just the TO's decision is final.
Yes, I think that's a really healthy way to go about it. Do you have though a process of like fair like remuneration? Like, is it like, oh, they're being quite polite, we can have a conversation, or like the minute rudeness happens, we're gonna move on from this convo? Hopefully none of that happens, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that none of that happens.
That's a dream world you're living in my opinion, based on last year.
Well, I think the ref team has generally agreed that as soon as anyone starts talking back to us, we're just going to have Madigan hit them.
Just with a bat. Just with a bat.
And then we're done.
All right, okay.
End of argument.
All right.
I would like to go back to your sport analogy, in that it's actually interesting that the rugby cricket one is the sort of active judging, non-active judging, because in cricket, the umpires never actually do anything unless the players ask them to. Like in cricket, a player has to say, was he out? And then the umpire says yes or no. Whereas in rugby, it's more of an active judging. The referee tells the players what they have done wrong and actually proactively warns them, hey, you are about to do something wrong. And so you hear the referee in rugby warning the players, you're about to do something illegal, which is very different from cricket and different from soccer. So yeah, I do actually use the sporting analogies, which doesn't fall very well on the Americans when I try to tell them how cricket and rugby refereeing is done.
It's exactly like cricket, mate. And they're like, what? Yeah. They're like, oh, it's grass ice hockey for gentlemen. Like, oh, wow, okay. All right, so the teams. Talk to me about the teams. Are you excited? Like, obviously, you're US-based. I think you're supporting Wales if you're supporting anyone. Is that right?
I mean, yeah, I'm Welsh through and through. I've been a huge Team Wales fan for a long time. So I don't think I'll be able to judge any Welsh tables without being biased. And of course, being Welsh, that means I won't be able to judge any English tables either, because the bias works in the opposite direction. Yeah, it's interesting. Do I view myself as being an American-based or a Welsh-based one? I guess I'm Welsh-based, even though I've lived in the US for 23 years now, and I know the US team pretty well. I know them all, on a personal level, pretty well.
So, like, let's talk about through some of the teams. Who do you fancy? Who do you fancy to win? Obviously, England, the current champions and triple champions, I think, is the actual right way to say it. Unbeaten, pretty much. Do you think there's any likelihood anyone could take them out?
I'd like to think so. I think for the event, it would be good if it's not a blowout by Team England. They are clearly the favourites, I think. I think the Scandinavian teams are always going to be strong. Denmark, Sweden have got some strength there. Well, maybe it's just my bias because I know them pretty well and I've been sort of on the fringe of their preparations. I think Team America are going to surprise people. I think their preparations have been much better than they have been in the past. I think they're ready to go, and they have some. How can I say this without sounding critical of the past? I think the players that Team America have got this year are some of the best players they've ever had as a group.
That's fair to say. I definitely think that they've been prepping more. I feel like last year they weren't in the same headspace as they are now. It's a very different American. I would say it's a very different American community compared to last year. And a very different team to last year, in my opinion. So yeah, I agree with you. They're one of my dark horses. Belgium are two of my dark horses, in my opinion. I think Belgium have definitely prepped a lot. The Greeks are very good. I don't think the Greeks have got enough practice. And I think they're going to be there's a bit of a culture shock, which I think is going to be quite interesting as well. Okay, so what are common ref issues that I might not have thought about, or something I haven't really processed myself? What have you thought, right, this is something I'm going to do, or something you get commonly asked, or do you not get asked much at all commonly?
I think, again, it comes down to regional differences. The terrain pack for Worlds is something that will cause some issues if the players have not been practicing with it. I saw your previous interview with the Spain captains, and they've been actually playing the Worlds pack for a long time.
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic, great, thank you. Some of the other teams may not have done. As an example, at LVO, there were quite a few of Team England and Team Wales made it over. And LVO, we used garrisons, and I had to explain to Phil Marshall and was he playing Dan or Mark from Team Wales? I think Dan, how garrisons work. Neither of them had any idea how garrisons worked. Well, you better know how garrisons work for Worlds, because we're using garrisons rules. So I think the terrain rules are probably the biggest one that's going to cause questions and headaches.
I think that's fair though, because I think terrain is at most events effectively non-existent, and then it's become a new thing for terrain to become more effective, and which is good. I'm super pro that. I think that it's very good, and it's terrain maps at Worlds, right? Not yes. Terrain, not player placed. All right, good. That's correct. Better, in my opinion. I don't know if you disagree or agree, but that's my opinion. It feels like that's more positive, and also means that there's some uniformity for you as a ref, so you don't have to keep guessing what everything is.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I've been my own packs. I've used terrain maps for years now and love it. Not as strict and as finely planned as the Worlds event. I think you can go a bit further with a pack in Worlds because all of the players should know what they're doing and should be prepared and should have read the pack. Whereas, but a general GT, a general event, you can't be too strict with that because you have to expect that some players won't have read it and won't be prepared. But for Worlds, you can go really, really strict.
Yes, you can. I think that's good though. I think that's legitimately.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've had some other questions in the chat, and if anyone does have any questions for Gareth, please do let me know. Obviously, this is also an interesting one because how can I phrase this in the best way possible? There's also in sports, as an analogy, a culture, and some things in the culture are very accepted. In ice hockey, you can just have a fight. Yeah. In rugby, you're pretty much having a fight. In cricket, you can't even get your whites dirty. Obviously, that's not true, but again, for people out there who aren't English, it's also a fun event with a lot of the teams who'll be drinking quite a bit. And last year there was some conversational bits. Have you guys discussed how like people's behavior? Because it's difficult, right? People are paying to go on a holiday. They're paying to go to an event. They are also paying to represent their nation, which I think really kind of draws a line under some stuff. But how do you guys feel about? Have you thought about that? Thought that through? What am I trying to say? Behavior, behavioral issues.
We haven't had many discussions yet on behavior. I tend to think of Worlds as not being a standard GT, right? Yes, the players are paying to participate and they're paying to travel. For Team USA, Team Australia, they're paying a lot of money to travel across the world. But you are representing your country, and it is a competitive event. This is not a narrative event. This is not. It's a tournament. It's a competition. It's not really an event. So you should take the competitive side and representing your country and doing your country proud and playing to the best of your ability more seriously than the typical Warhammer event, which means, being able to stand up at the table rather than falling over drunk. I'm all for drinking at Warhammer events in general. I think having a bar with copious amounts of cheap alcohol is extremely important at all Warhammer events. But for Worlds, I think you should take it a little bit more seriously. Just keep track a bit better.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. It'd be interesting to. I hope you guys put a process in for behaviour, because I think that's one of those really problematic things that I've personally experienced at events where I've been next to someone totaled. I mean, can't see totaled, and it's been kind of funny, but I'm also the other person's paid to be here and play a game. But you also don't want to be the other adult in the room. This is even as an ex-doorman being I don't want to be telling you how to behave. You're a grown-up, you should be fine on your own. That's not my job. My job is to be you're out of coherency. Minus 10 points. That's my job. So that's a challenge. That's a challenging thing. That's super challenging, and I really hope you guys have a super okay time, and that doesn't become something you need to think through. But I guess preparation is the key part, right? Have you guys done a lot of prep? Because that has to be the element, because reacting on the day is going to be more stressful if you haven't done the prep ahead of time. You guys must have done a lot of prep, right?
We have. We've had a lot of discussions. Those discussions will remain between the refs for now.
I'm not asking. I'm just saying you must have done a lot of prep, right?
Yes.
Good.
We're prepared.
All right, we're prepared. One pocket full of dust for the eyes. Okay, all right, perfect.
I will say at the you talked about fighting between the players at the SoCal Open a few years ago. There was a fight, not in Sigmar though, in Star Wars Legion, where a player threw fists at his opponent, and then when the TO got involved, threw fists at the TO.
No way.
Yes, which was fun to watch.
No way. I mean, it's funny that people talk about it as if it doesn't happen in football all the time or cricket all the time. I mean, I don't know if there's been many punch-ups in cricket. I'm sure there probably have been a couple. But yeah, it does happen, which I think is quite interesting. Everything's on the line. All right, okay. You also judge in singles?
Yes, I'll be there for the whole week. Maybe a little bit jet lagged for singles, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, don't worry. It'll be, I guess, worse as the week goes on, which is great. All right, good. And then we talked about the teams, I think. But is there anyone you're excited to see play that you don't normally see play? Obviously, you see a lot of the Americans play a lot of the time. Or is there a nation that you'd quite like to keep your eye on? Not as a judge, just you'd like to see how they play.
Not really a nation. There are certain players and there's certain lists. I'm a big Khorne fan. I only ever play Khorne. I like to think I do pretty well with Khorne, and there's some interesting Khorne lists at the event. The Greek Khorne player, whose name escapes me now, I watched him at Fest a couple of weeks ago. He did very well. He made it into the top 5, I think, at Fest with Khorne, and he plays Khorne the way that I play Khorne, and that was great to watch. So I'll be excited to watch some Khorne games go on. Some of Team England I haven't watched before, so that'll be interesting. Some of Team Wales I haven't watched before, so that'll be interesting. I don't think I've seen many of the Scandinavians play, or Team France either. So yeah, I'm interested to see a lot of them. There's a lot of names there that you kind of know from just following the game internationally, but you've never actually met. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's some really good players. Like France and Belgium have got some great players. Sweden's got some great players. They're very, very. You got to see Gear play from Norway the other day on the top table. He's great as well.
He was great.
Yeah, great on the top table. So super fun. That's one of my favorite bits is checking all that out and how they all play.
I also like you see all of the the TSN stats, etc., seeing who the top players in the world are, and you kind of get an image in your mind of how they play. But then when you see them on the table and they're actually, it used to be thought, particularly in the US with the ITC rankings, that to win at ITC you had to be a kind of aggressive player and be mean and horrible on the table. But Gavin and Noah have really kind of switched that around, and I think that's also going to be the case at Worlds. I'm going to be surprised at how nice the players are to each other, and table etiquette is going to be much better than I would otherwise expect. That's my hope. We'll see.
I think that's generally true. I think the only real culture shock about Worlds, which a lot of people walked away from last year, was clocks. Chess clocks was, I think, the big culture. I'm sure Tom would have told you this already, but that feels like that was the big culture shock from last year. From an external viewer, that was a lot of feedback. He had a lot of the Europeans kind of walking away from the tables being like, oh, I just timed out. And I was like, and then they weren't necessarily timed out. They were timed out by their opponent. Very different things. They didn't time out. They were timed out. So it's really fun. It's going to be really interesting watching players manage their clocks better and hopefully manage their clocks better, which I think is going to be.
I mean, hopefully they're prepared. Hopefully no player will turn up and be, what, we're using clocks. Hopefully they've been practicing with clocks. They know how to use clocks, and they're able to play their games, quickly.
Yeah, I think that'll happen. I think that'll happen. But we'll see. We'll see, because I think that's going to be another little interesting thing as well. So I don't think I've necessarily communicated this to the rules team, so I can just do it now. But what we always do when we do coverage is our table bosses always stand as refs versus judges, which is different. So what we tend to do is if we see something illegal, what we do is we stop play, then we go and get a judge, and then at that point we leave the judge and the two players to engage with each other versus making judgments on the table, if that makes sense. But what we don't do is inactively leave it, because that's wrong. If something's been so I guess that's been how you also, and I'm lucky enough to have Charlie, who runs events all up and down the UK, and Mark, who's run a few events as well and table boss for me a long time. So two players who know if something's illegal or not illegal. But that's also one of those things as well that happens, because I've dealt with that a lot. We've ended up sitting, communicating about what the best way to do about it. What to deal with it is just go and get a judge, basically, and then tell them that everyone's been naughty and they need to be slapped. Is the quickest
That's
answer.
how you'd expect anyone who's at a table watching to behave, right? If any spectator at a table should be doing that, and yeah, Charlie's gonna be, as Tom just said, he's gonna make 90% of the calls anyway, and he's gonna get it right. But yeah, just call over a judge and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, I just think that's always a really nice way to communicate as well, like on those things. Because one of my things as well is to be really conscious about the audience getting something wrong, because I can very easily call something wrong as the caster to something else that's happening on the table, and then the players then end up in trouble, which is a shame, and you don't want that to happen at all.
There's also, with the casting, or the stream viewers are yelling about a rule that's being misplayed or something that's been done wrong, and the players and the ref have already talked about it, know about it, and have decided, you know what, we're just going to carry on, or so it's often the case that the viewers at home don't have the full picture of what has already been discussed or already been figured out.
No, but one of the things we are aiming to do, and I know that was useful Blood Tithe 3 years ago, so a long time ago now. One of the things that we did was, I don't want to out anyone, so I'll just tell the story without character names. But we had the audio for both players, and we were recording each game in full, so you could just have it back as a singular piece where you could listen to the players and record. Anyway, both players disagreed about what happened on the tabletop. Then they start arguing with the judge. Both of them saying that they didn't do that thing that they said. Judge came over to me and he's like, "Hey Rob, are they? What's the situation?" I was like, I just said in front of everyone, I was like, "Both games are the game's completely recorded. I can just pause it now if you want. You can just go back and listen to everything that was said." And then both players changed their mind completely. Like it was it was an amazing experience. They're both like, "Oh, actually, it doesn't matter," because then neither of them was sure that they were right. Like it wasn't that one of them said sorry and one of them moved on. They both backtracked because it was quite clear that neither of them was sure who was right. And I thought that was a great moment. I was like, they were like, and the judge just walked off. Was like, "I'm fine in both of them points anyway. Fuck them." And I walked away. Anyway, that was really good, I thought. Where do you see judging at events going in the future? Like, do you feel it's going to be something that's going to be needed more as events grow in size?
I think, well, yes. I'm hopeful that Games Workshop will start taking events and tournaments a little bit more seriously. They seem to have been pushing towards that, at least on the 40k side. Mm-hmm. And I think that will dribble down to the Sigmar side as well. And so hopefully Sigmar will grow to have more tournament-orientated GHBs and packs, which means that there are fewer decisions needing to be made by tournament organizers and judges. The cleaner the rule system is, the cleaner the tournament pack is that is distributed by Games Workshop, then the less work TOs and judges have to do. So maybe that will be an improvement that means that judging is less required. But also maybe, it is Games Workshop, so who knows?
Incredibly fair point. How do you feel about the pace of releases leading up to the event? Obviously, Ossiarch Bone Reapers and Soulbleak Revelords won't be in play. Neither will New Seraphon, but only Gavin is playing Seraphon out of everyone. And there's no Ossiarchs and very few Soulblight. I'm not really asking about the decision for the cutoff because I think that makes sense. Everyone understands. But a lot of new armies, which as of yet don't have FAQs or they don't have Games Workshop FAQs out, it's been pretty interesting time. Do you think that's going to be more of an issue on the tabletop, those new armies, than less, than the books that have been out for a while?
I think so. I mean, as a judge in general, not just for Worlds, but in general, the pace of release over the past 3 months has just been insane. We've had 8 new books, and just trying to keep up with all of the new rules is very difficult. So yeah, it's not ideal in any sense of the word. And I don't think anyone thinks it's ideal. Players, Games Workshop, it is what it is though. So we've just had to make do. I think with the FAQs that came out this week, all of the armies that are legal at Worlds have now got FAQs, but the ones that came out this week were a bit late for the rules cutoff for Worlds, but there wasn't anything that we didn't already have FAQ'd the same way, or that there's some minor differences that aren't really going to impact things.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. I was going to interesting because I think it's going to be like. What are your thoughts on the actual meta at Worlds? Like, what do you think about, everyone being Jaws of Mork, like lots of Zinch? Like, give me your thoughts on like the actual game state and some of the matches. I'd be interested what your thoughts are.
I think the game state today is not as good as it was a couple of months ago. Some of the recent books have upset the meta and are too strong. KO is just too strong, particularly in a team's environment where you can, put them against somebody. I haven't seen the stats fully, but I presume more than 20 of the 24 teams have a KO.
I think it's 21. It's the most popular are. The most popular is obviously Jaws of Mork. Sorry, I mean includes like Gits, but Jaws of Mork with 23, and then it's Zinch in second place, and then KO and LRL are 19 each. So mainly your Welsh boys brought a Cruel Boys.
Yeah, no comment.
You should make a comment. I want to hear the comment.
I played against that player with that. I was actually in Cardiff last week. I played against him with that Cool Boys list. I played some Save to Darkness against him. It's a tough list. It's got some tough matchups, So yeah, we'll see how it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the meta, I think it would have been better had we taken the meta from 3 months ago. I think the game was in a lot more balanced then, and I don't think we would have seen 23 teams taking the same list or approximately the same list. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. The game is still in a really good place right now. I think it will be better after the next balance update. Hope it will be better after the next balance update. The one thing to be said for the crazy release schedule we've had over the last 3 months is that it is going to slow down now. There won't be many books released for the rest of the year, which means that the balance team, whoever they are, have a better job at looking at what's going on without things constantly changing. So I think the game will get better balanced after the next balance update, and maybe the one after that as well.
I'm very hopeful. Thanks to Dadbod, by the way, for donating £20 to the PC fund, trying to raise some money for equipment for Worlds. So super appreciate that. Very nice of you. Halfway there till the first target, which is great. I think I agree with you. I think the balance is going to slow down. Although I personally think while some armies are strong, KO, it's not that they don't have natural predators, which they do, but I think the game's in a good place, super interesting, and I think it will slow down. And I think that you'll hear the same people whinging it's too fast, whinge it's too slow, like in the same period of time. I think everything.
Fine.
Fine. I think there's going to be so much play, which is why I think Worlds is going to be so exciting, because you're definitely seeing like almost a speed run. Slaanesh is an interesting one. You've seen a speed run of like, okay, what is Slaanesh? Like, how does it work? And you've seen like a couple of different builds. Just talking to Peter from Team Poland earlier, he was saying that he doesn't necessarily like the Slaanesh builds that we're seeing for Worlds. The Khorne lists. So you're a Khorne fan, so there's definitely a demon element, but there's some people who are playing mortals. So I as much as I know that you definitely will think, yeah, I definitely know where Khorne is at. It hasn't necessarily been fully solved, or there's a couple of different options. Does that sound right? Feel right for Khorne?
It does. I also think that the team's environment has a different option set for Khorne. I think Team America's Khorne list, which is all Blood Warriors, I think that's really strong in a team's environment. I wouldn't take it to singles.
Okay.
Yeah. I find that interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how Khorne does. And I think the interesting thing at Worlds is not going to be seeing how KO, Gits, LRL do and Zinch do. It's going to be seeing how all of the other armies do and how they pair against each other. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I've said this before. I would absolutely love a process of being able to record the pairings. No one's ever done that. I don't know if that's something. I don't know who to talk to about that, but like, I would like the metrics like, you know, if you could get all of the pairings from a round, collate it, and then do that for all 6 rounds, that would be like, actually, in post-analysis, that's fascinating data. Like, but, like, so I would love to do that. I don't know if there's a process of collating that information. That's super hard to achieve, but maybe there is. I'm not sure. But that's always something I've wanted to be able to analyze in post, because when you do look at the results from a team perspective, you you know that this player played that, but you don't know that they got chosen to be the defender in that matchup, and therefore they clearly went into the tough pairing, and they dragged out like an 8-point loss, which is a great loss. Like, and like, I feel like we miss a great amount of analysis by not getting the pairing data. So I might talk to Tom or you or someone else later on to try and get that and make that happen, because I think that would be fascinating. But it's also a prodigious amount of work. So like, I don't know what the process is. I don't know. But
I think there's, like, if I was at home watching, I think I would find that possibly more fascinating than the actual games themselves.
Agreed.
And the pairing, particularly in a team's environment, which is using a scoring system where it's okay to get a loss.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that which team wins is not just down to how much you score in each game. It's you can actually lose more games than you win, but still win the round, because every loss that you did was was a very, very close loss.
Yeah.
And that is something that you have to take into account during the pairing process. It's like, I know that they're going to lose this game, but I think they're going to lose it by very little.
Yeah.
Which is a very strong result.
Yeah, I got another question for you, because two questions actually that kind of like off the back of that. Number one, and I wonder what your thoughts are. I'm going to ask Madigan the same question. Like, number one, how do you feel about the pairings being so impactful in the event? Because it's a World Championships we're playing Age of Sigmar, and the pairings process is something created independently out of Age of Sigmar, not ever even, you know, promoted by Games Workshop themselves, although they do have their own team events and they do use a pairing system, so I guess they pseudo-promote it. Like, how do you feel about the pairing process being so impactful? Because my personal opinion, I would have a pairing process, but I would only pair into one battle plan, and I would just be like, it should be how the armies play against each other versus the army into the battle plan against the army, if that makes sense. Do you have a thought on this, like positive, negative? And it's okay to be obviously different to me.
Yeah, my personal take, when I run my own team's events, I like having a fixed battle plan. I didn't follow last year's Worlds as much as I wanted to because of the time zone difference mainly, but it's often said that England won because they paired into the plans rather than into the armies. I think that's a shame.
Yeah.
I would rather that it was. You could see an argument that if you wanted to find out which country had the best players, then pairings would just be random, right?
In many ways.
So then there would be no skill, no pairing skill would be involved in the result. I wouldn't want that personally, but you could see an argument for that. I think the pairing process of knowing which armies play against which armies is good and important. I'm less interested in knowing which armies play well in which mission. Mainly also because the missions and the terrain being fixed is very specific to Worlds. And so people at home cannot take that information and actually do anything with it. It's not like they say, okay, well, at Worlds it was discovered that every team wanted to play KO on mission X. It's not really that. It's that they wanted to play KO on mission X with terrain set like that, which may not be the case at any other event. Yeah,
that's really valuable. So that's a well thought out opinion. And then I guess then my follow up is: are you excited about the round 2 and 4, where it's all of the terrible missions? Because obviously the captains voted for that, and that's where I think the negative for this year, and my only negative, and nothing to do with Tom obviously, is that we're playing some of the worst missions, and we're showcasing.
100% agree.
Yeah, we're showcasing bad
insanity.
Yeah, it's going to be odd.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it publicly before, but that decision, amongst others, is one of the reasons why democracy is a bad idea.
Agreed. What a lovely way to end the sentence, end the interview. One of the judges says democracy is a bad idea. And guess what? Judges not a democracy. Gareth, it's been a pleasure having you on. I love hearing your thoughts and about stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have you got anyone you want to shout out about like anything that's going on about Worlds before you go?
No.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Not even go Team Wales. Not even that.
I'm meant to be completely unbiased. So.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
I'll say, how about this? Go Cruel Boys list from Team Wales.
There are 2 Cruel Boys lists, so they're like maybe go all the Cruel Boys lists. Who
Yes,
knows?
go Cruel Boys. There you go.
There we go. Perfect. Thanks for being on. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.